Today I'm going to tell you why porn blockers don't work long term. My name's Russell Beebe, certified sex addiction therapist and recovery coach. The reason porn blockers don't work long term is because it really doesn't get to the root of the issue with porn addiction. So if you have porn addiction, it makes sense to protect yourself and put a blocker on your phone because that's where you go to look at porn. Totally makes sense. The problem with that is that that's not the real issue. The porn behavior, the acting out behavior, the looking at pornography is just a symptom of a deeper issue. So let's take a quick look at what addiction actually is. It's really two things: a physical compulsion to act out. So when a person acts out, this was true for me. I'm in recovery from porn and sex addiction. When I would sit down and start looking at pornography, it would suck me in, and I would just go and click away for hours and hours, and I'd get into this trance-like state, and it was nearly impossible for me to stop unless something happened. Just like an alcoholic takes one drink and then they have another and another and another. A non-alcoholic can stop after like one drink or two drinks, but not with an alcoholic. Same thing with a porn addict. They get into this ritual and trance-like state of acting out, and once they start, they can't stop. Once they're done acting out, though, they make a promise to themselves they're never going to do it again. So I would be finished acting out and I would say to myself and to everybody else, I'm never going to do it again. And at some point in the near future, 20 minutes, 2 weeks, sometimes 2 months, after I made that solemn oath to myself that I was never going to do it again, I had a mental obsession. I had a mental process, an obsession with a preoccupation with acting out that would lead me back to it over and over again. The main problem centered in my mind rather than my body. I could decide to stop, but the urges would overwhelm me and the obsession would overwhelm me, and I'd go back to it over and over and over again. Emerging remorseful, promising myself I'm never going to do it again, and I lived in that cycle. But what really changed for me in my recovery is when I realized that behavior is just a symptom of a deeper issue. Somebody once said to me, Russell, you don't have an acting out problem, you don't have a porn problem, you have a life problem. And that changed my perspective of recovery. And the person pointed out, this was somebody that was helping me, is like, ask yourself why you're acting out. And if you really look at it, you're really trying to solve for the underlying issue, the restless, irritable, and discontent feelings that you have, your internal reaction to life. And when I thought about it, I was like, that's true, because when I sit down and start looking at pornography, I felt this relief that would come over me. So the porn, or the addictive behavior with any addiction, whether it be drugs, alcohol, food, porn, the addictive behavior is actually the solution to the life problem, to the internal reaction to life, what I've come to know as restless, irritable, and discontent. And the truth is, the only way that we can recover from this long term is to heal that underlying issue enough that we don't need the porn to feel better. And that was absolutely true in my recovery. Once I started getting around a supportive community, prioritizing my recovery, and then taking an honest look at myself through written processes, working with a coach, working with a counselor, I started to get to know myself, and it started to change me from the inside out. And over time, I started to feel better, I started to act better, I started to just show up better in life. And I found over time that that mental obsession went away. So in over 16 years, I no longer get hit with the gut-wrenching obsession to act out. It's easy to stay away from the behavior. And that's not because I controlled the behavior and I put porn blockers on my things and I did this and I tried to suck the life out of my life, right? It was because I healed the things in my life that I was using the pornography to feel better, the things that I was acting out over. So it's important to look at that. So the reason porn blockers don't work long term is because it really doesn't solve the core issue. The thing about it is, with that restless, irritable, and discontent and that internal reaction to life, I could set up all these blockers on my phone, but I'll always find a way around it, or I'll always find some other way to act out. Or, if it's on my phone and I tell myself, well, I have the porn blocker on my phone, so I'm not going to act out. I could go to a store and get a magazine. There's lots of different ways to act out. There's other ways to look at pornography. I could convince the person that holds the password for the porn blocker that I need to be lifted, so that people do this all the time. I got to go to this website and it's blocking it and it's not a porn website. I need the password, or I needed to unblock it, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at porn. There's always a way to get around the porn blocker. So porn blockers are only ever a band-aid and a temporary solution. So just to be clear though, I do think that porn blockers are a useful tool in early recovery. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just be very careful to think that that alone is going to help you stay sexually sober or sober from the pornography long term. If you leave the underlying issues unaddressed, you're doomed to figure out a way to get around the porn blocker. So it's only ever band-aid. But to be clear, my clients, they use porn blockers all the time. It's helpful, very helpful to portrayed partners who have been hurt by the porn addict's behavior, to know that that gives them a sense of confidence that, you know, at least there's something that he's doing to try to stop this. But again, it's only ever a band-aid. So it's really important to utilize it, but just to realize, don't have that be the only thing that you do. So what is the solution to this? So let's say you get into recovery, you put the porn blocker on there. What else do you do? So if I'm saying to you, it's not a long-term solution, what is the long-term solution? The long-term solution is really 4 core steps that we do with clients in my recovery coaching program, which is 1, we establish what sexual sobriety is. So what is what are all the behaviors outside of pornography that are not okay, that are compulsive addictive behaviors? We get really clear on a definition of what sober is, including gray areas, which are areas that make you susceptible to acting out on your bottom line. But getting clear about what's okay and what's not is really important. Second thing we do is we create a recovery routine. So it's not just, I decided to stop acting out, I'm going to go to therapy, I'm going to do my sobriety definition. We have to define what are the things that I need to do on a daily basis in order to be in recovery and maintain my sobriety. So that looks like going to peer support groups. That looks like participating in the program if you're in my program. It looks like doing a morning routine where you do some meditation, you do some self-reflection, you do some curriculum work. What do you do during the day when you get upset? What do you do during the day when you start to get urges to act out? The recovery routine establishes all that. And then once we have the sobriety definition and the recovery routine in place, that's when we start to dig in. And I do it in written processes. We dig in to the underlying issues. So talk therapy, I'm a therapist, by the way, so I'm not knocking therapy, but talk therapy is very transient. So you go in, you talk, you'd only retain about 10% of the information that you process in therapy, and then you leave and you've talked about some stuff, you got caught up, but there's just no concrete sort of understanding and self-awareness that comes out of that. It does over time if you're in therapy for many, many years. So what I do is I leverage writing is a much more concrete tool, and not only writing, but asking the right questions. So when I talk about underlying issues, that's really centers around what are the fears, the false beliefs we have. What are the building blocks of this internal reaction to life that causes this restless, irritable, and discontent, this need to act out and to get relief from that internal reaction? We take a look at that. So you're in this third phase of looking at underlying issues and healing underlying issues. We take a clear look at ourselves and our reaction to life, and what starts to happen is we start to think better, we start to behave better, we start to feel better. And that's where the healing takes place. Under the spotlight of self-awareness and knowing ourselves better, we start to heal. And guess what? Life gets better because we're working on our life issue, but also the obsession goes away and it becomes much easier to stop acting out. Then the fourth thing we do is we do what we call a relapse prevention plan or a recovery maintenance plan, which is really you build upon the recovery routine that you establish. Now that you're doing well, that you're sexually sober from the porn, not free of the obsession to act out, and starting to feel better and understanding yourself and healing those underlying issues, what do you need to do long term? Those 4 things is what we do in my program. That's the thing that helps people get long-term abstinence. And they might use porn blockers, but at the end of the day, it's a much more complex issue than that, and it requires a much more complex intervention. Hey, if you're liking this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Helps other people see more videos, helps you to see more videos that we put out. Lots of videos on my YouTube page. Now, if you're like, wow, this really resonated with me and it makes sense, and you're interested in potentially working with us in my recovery coaching program, there's a link somewhere around this video, probably in the description. And go to my website, there's some good information on there, but there's opportunity in there to book a call with my recovery advisor. And what they'll do is they'll take a look at your situation, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us in the recovery coaching program. And at the very least, they'll give you some good tips and tricks. And then if it makes sense and you want to do it, then we'll talk about what it would look like working together, and we'll get you in and we'll help you recover from porn addiction. So click that link, check it out, book a call, and we'll talk soon.